Well, we got the Jim Cirronella, okay. All right, check.
The audience, I will introduce him.
There you go. All right, here we go.
Okay, this is going to be a tough panel, as you can all tell. It's the darkest day that Monsterpalooza has ever known. It's my pleasure to introduce the cast and crew of Day of the Dead. First we have Laurie Cardell, Terry Alexander, Captain Rose Joe Blau, and Mike Terzic. And how come we do not have Mr. Savini here? He's going to make a grand entrance, so we'll allow for that. Maybe not.
I threatened him, but what? He doesn't know from her.
We are going to take questions from the audience, but first I'm going to get them started by asking some questions. So the first thing is, we know Day of the Dead was filmed under unique conditions. So I want to know, there's filmed in the Gateway Center, like a complex, limestone mine complex that do a lot of vehicles.
It's very difficult to hear.
They're going to talk in a second, so you don't really need to hear it. Each of your experiences working in that mine location. Can we start with Laura?
Hi everybody, thanks for showing up. Without you guys, we would not be here, and it's nice that you continue to, support the Day of the Dead, one of our favorite films of George's. So, anyway, yeah, the limestone cave was a very difficult place to work. A lot of us came from the theater, so in a way, you're used to working hard and giving your all, and you're trained to work under difficult, conditions like that. And it was just, we were all sick, what can I tell you? There was so much respiratory illness, and we would pass it on to each other. But the cave, there were 25 miles of lakes in there. So it was very, very damp, and you could always hear the water dripping, just like in the film. I'm sure they had to add that in, but it was always dank and dark, and so we would leave early in the morning from our hotel and never see daylight. We literally went right to the set, worked all day and to the evening, and then went back. But it was grueling, but it also added to the atmosphere, which helped us with our characters, of course, and made us very close, because it was so bad. You know how you get close together when you're all experiencing some difficulty. So it was really I'm sure everybody will continue on that vein here.
I arrived in Pittsburgh and went to Beaver Falls, Pennsylvania, where the mountain and the caves were. I did one scene the second day, and my line was, "You got that right, man." And then I sat around for 2.5 weeks doing nothing. So for me, it was, when am I going to work? When am I going to work? So that was the experience for me. Of course, it was, a sickness running around all the time, and it was just a difficult shoot. But we got it done by putting it together and working for George, because George was one of the greatest directors I've worked with. And when you get somebody like that who's hooked into you, you just give your all and your best.
Let's see, my experience working in the cave. I met this big girl named Gretchen, and no, that was a different cave. Laurie said we all were sick, but she didn't tell you we were all sick before we came into the mine. It was pretty grueling. I mean, only nothing compared to being in Baghdad. But we were all underground. It was cold. We never saw the sun. The limestone, you've heard of black lung disease. Well, you had white lung disease too from limestone. And come home at the end of a 10, 12-hour day, and you take the makeup off and blow your nose, and it looked like an LSD trip was coming out of your nose. I don't know what the hell was crawling in there. But the great thing was, we had nowhere to go when we weren't shooting except for a little area. So we all got to spend a hell of a lot of time talking to each other, and we got very, very close. And that's one of the things that I think came across the mind, made us sick and friendly.
And Mike, also describe your role in the film. Not only your role, but your role in the production. Yeah, everything.
Okay, well, my recollections are right along the line with Lori and Joe. Working in the mine, we'd arrive early in the morning, and Pittsburgh, we shot in the fall, so Pittsburgh winters are dark, and so it's dark, and we get in the mine, and it's dark, and we're shooting all day long, and we come out at night, and it's dark, so the only time we really saw the sun was on Sunday, or our day off, and then we'd all gather at the Beaver Valley Mall. Hey Lori, hey Joe, yeah. We ran into everybody there because it was the only place to hang out. But I kind of viewed the mine experience, our shop, Tom's shop in the mine, was kind of like Disneyland, I guess. We were always cranking and trying to get things done. So whenever, like Terry had, you didn't shoot for 2 weeks, so you get bored. Let's go see what the effects guys are doing. Everybody kind of like, came through there and hung out for a period.
It was a place to hang out.
It was a place. But my role in the movie, I played the eviscerated corpse, the gut-spilled corpse, and that came about because all of us on the effects crew got to play featured zombies. We all got killed in very interesting ways. So John Volich, he was the pop-top zombie with the shovel, and Greg, Greg, part of the film, Dave Kinlan was a pre-zombie, Howard Berger was a spun around shot zombie, Everett, I forget which one Everett was, but we all got to play parts, and Tom was the first zombie you see in the movie. We called it Dr. Tongue, it was the jawless zombie. We did a casting of Tom, and he appeared as this puppet zombie in the first scene.
So keeping in mind the difficult situation we're working in, what was the difficult scene, either together or by yourselves, for each of you? What was the most difficult scene you had in the film?
Shooting zombies was very difficult because I had Joe's 44 Magnum, and they had another one just like it. 357. Bump.
Go ahead.
Anyway.
Make my day with the day.
Anyway, you have to stand there while they wire the gun all the way down inside your costume, all the way over to the other side of the room where you're shooting. Now, it takes about an hour for them to wire it up and get it together and put all the energy and electric stuff in there. So you're standing there, it's cold, it's bitter, sticky cold. You can't move. You can't move and go sit down and sit in the warm, and you're just standing there. An hour later, they say, okay, let's go! Let's go! And so your energy has to be like that every time, because they can't shoot it too many times, or they could, but you want to get it the first take. So that was very difficult. That's when you got sick, because you couldn't move, and you get the chills, and it was tough shoot, tough time.
Yeah, keep in mind, this was pre-CG. So like you said, you had to do a simple gunshot. It took an hour to, rig that, and today they just, I'll just put a little flash in the barrel and we'll fix that with, After Effects. And the same thing with blood splatters now. I see so many, they don't even rig people anymore for blood spatter. It's just all done in the computer. We had to, if we didn't get it right, it's another hour, 2 hours to rewrite it.
Or another day or two. When we did the arm chop, and I chopped the arm off, the first time, I'm sure, if you're a fan of the movie, you've probably read about this, but the first arm that was built, that was a brilliant scene to set up also, because Anthony his arm was in the ground underneath, and it was cold, and they had to dig a hole and set this, anyway, so it was the first take, and the machete bounced off the arm, because it was made out of a different material that didn't go thunk. So they had to rebuild the arm out of whack, so that, you know, when it went in, it worked better. But to rebuild the whole effect, and also when the hands come out of the wall, the first time they did it, I guess it wasn't anticipated the force of everybody's hands going through, and the wall came down on me, basically, and it was very funny. I wish we had that. I've had somebody have that. Yeah, and so they had to rebuild that wall. I mean, it's expensive, costly to do that, but those two effects, but it was so great that it wasn't CG, although when we fired the Uzis, there was some kind of weird flash there. Does anybody know, was that animated? Or?
Yeah, I can tell you, and actually, those hands that came through on Lord Seaman were the hands that were used to knock down the Berlin Wall. So they cost a lot of money to fly them in and out. Yeah, no, the Uzi was painted in, and good you mentioned Uzis. That 9-year-old girl that shot her instructor, which comes to my hardest part. You'd think it would have been me being on the floor for 4.5 hours and smelling pig guts. But the hardest thing for me was putting a gun up to the temple of John Amblis. Never seen his performance in Martin. You should see it. It's an extraordinary performance. He played Dr. Fisher, and I had to put this gun right to his temple. And you know, accidents happen. In fact, an accident happened on that shot because when I pulled the trigger, the squib, which is a condom full of blood with a little wire in it, and it explodes. And when it exploded, the debris caught me in both eyes, and I didn't know really what had happened. I thought, I'm going to be blinded. So that was the hardest part, was holding a gun to a friend's head and pulling the trigger. It was a nauseating feeling. Next time I talk to Charlton Heston, I'm going to rip his cold, dead hands and shove them up his ass.
And Joe was quite good about holding that gun on John again when the camera spun around on me to watch them. All these actors were with us every second, even though they weren't on camera. That makes a great difference in the movie, and everybody's in tune like that. So
we would come. If we were in the scene, or we were in the scene, but we were, you know, our shot wasn't in the scene. We were off camera, but we all hung around for each other and gave us, you know, a lot of times people don't do that. Other actors don't do that for each other. A lot of it's time and whatever, contracts or whatever, but we were able to be there for each other. And like I said, a lot of us came from the theater, so it was a real family feeling of camaraderie and a lot of, well, just an ensemble piece.
Actually, just a reference point, there's a book that was released last week called The Making of George A. Romero's Day of the Dead, and it's available on Amazon and Barnes & Noble, written by an author named Lee Carr, K-A-R-R. And it goes through the shooting of the film day by day. So
he talked to everybody. He researched the film thoroughly, and you know, got call sheets, existing call sheets, and it's just crazy.
Mike, what about what was your toughest thing, either in front of the camera or working behind?
In front of the camera, definitely for me. You know, I'm a behind-the-scenes guy, and I was really nervous the morning we shot that. You know, it's like, do I have a line? Do I have a line? Do I have a line? You know, that's it. How am I going to play this? You know, and I think I blew the first take. There's a still where I could drill right between the eyebrows, right between the center of the forehead, and I blew it, and I just, I'm sorry, you know, God, you know, clean me up and do it again, you know. But I think I managed to get it in like 2 or 3 takes, you know. Take 64, you know. We didn't do that. But for me, other than that, the hardest part was getting the glue out. You know, that Tom was like, you're really excessive with the glue. Gluing it all.
that's what Gretchen said.
I'm complaining, and he's telling me, I'm complaining, and Tom's telling me, you know, be quiet, you're playing a zombie in a Romero movie, you know. And 20 years later, yeah, I guess it's coming.
Laurie said about the family atmosphere in this film, and I think that's was prevalent in all of George's films, but of course, you know, the name George Romero is pretty big. So almost all the films are attributed, George Romero, George Romero. I want to know each person's, who would be, in your opinion, one of the most valuable people besides George working on this particular film? Somebody that really, went above and beyond, in your experience. For example, from knowing many of the cast members and people behind the scenes, I would feel somebody like Mike Gornick contributed so much more than just camera work. He's known as the cameraman, but he really is he's a very creative person, and it's kind of like he worked very well with George because he's the opposite of George. George is like a big picture guy, and Mike is a very detail-oriented person. In your experience, for each of you, who was somebody that was really valuable to this production?
I think Mike, you're right. Mike was fantastic, the cinematographer. He would explain things to us, and as far as, I am a photographer, I use it in art installations, and I love photography, so he would be able to talk about, each shot and how close they were, or, because I was a young actress at the time, I had done a lot of television, but I never did a major role in a film at that time, and I had a lot of technical questions as to, because I remember the first time I did some kind of movement like this on screen, and he said, "Oh, no, it's big, your head's big," and, but he was just a great guy. I wish he was here for you, because he has so much information, and he's very articulate, and if you ever get to hear him speak, I would highly recommend, taking time to listen or go to an event where he is. He was terrific. Also, Barbara and Cletus Anderson, who did the films and the set, they were my professors at Carnegie Mellon University when I went to school. And so that, once again, it was the family back together. And they were like my parents in a way on the set. It was great to have them as support. And but, like I said, it was such a feeling of family that particularly all the actors, we all hung out together too, but with the crew, it was terrific. But Mike Gornick, absolutely.
Yeah, they say an army runs on its stomach. Well, a film runs on its crew, and the people that get forgotten the most are the grips and the grunts and the lighting people and the caterers.
And Bamba,
and John Harrison. These people, they work very, very hard. They literally run to do things. In truth, we're in LA, a lot of people know that, but they're kind of the unsung heroes. Yeah, of course Gornick and Booba with the editing, and Harrison with the music, and I can't remember Stone's name.
Yeah, that's the sound guy.
Yeah, but definitely the crew, they are the unsung heroes of film.
Because usually in a movie, when you do a movie, you have to do something we call looping, because the sound isn't on it. They're not with you. And big stars come into these studios and have to do weeks of looping so you can hear the dialogue. And I only had to loop one line in the movie. It was that precise. And the line was, "Forget it, Billy Boy. It's a dead place." That's the only line I had to loop of all the lines in that movie. So that guy was on it. I swear, it was just too cool.
Yes, sir. Fuck you, sir.
Hey, there's little people here. Hey.
I guess, my personal viewpoint is from a special effects standpoint. Yeah, I think if you took anybody out of the film, it would have been like losing a family member, and having to start from scratch and find somebody else. Everyone just really kind of clicked. Everybody did their job and didn't complain, and Lord knows there were things to complain about, being in that mine for months. And I guess for me, it important to me, obviously, was Tom. You know, he gave us all freedom. Many of us were just starting out, Greg and Howard Berger, John Vulich, myself, Everett Burrell. This is all like, you know, their like maybe second or third movie. It was my first. And he gave us an incredible amount of freedom to explore ideas, you know, and we'd bounce things off, like, yeah, run with that, you know. And he wasn't looking, he's not the type of artist that looks over your shoulder and micromanages everything, you know. It's like if you're heading in the right direction, he'll let you run with it, you know. So I think we did some of our best work, you know, in that film, for better or for worse.
I think I just forgot that I'd have to give it to the on-set doctor. So, when we all got sick, besides B12 shots, I'm not quite sure what else we were getting, but he was a legitimate doctor, and he died 2 years later of an overdose.
There was a lot of bat guano floating around that cave. We'd walk in the morning, and there was a huge exhaust fan, you know, to change the air, and you'd, like, you know, count the bats that got sucked into the fan. Oh, I got bats today. Yeah. So.
Let me ask a question of Mike here. In the background, there's all these photos are from Mike's collection, and it's, you know, obviously different people sculpting and so forth. What was the, you know, zombies weren't as prevalent as they are now. Now everybody has their zombie style, obviously, but this movie had its own. You know, prior to that, Dawn of the Dead, a lot of it was grease paint, and then this movie. All the zombies had like a particular look. Now, what were the influences that you guys went to for that kind of thing?
Michael Jackson's Thriller. Yeah, it's, you know, Rick Baker, if you're going to steal from the best. Thriller had just come out. And so we were looking at that, you know, going, oh God, look at these. These are great. What a great take on zombies. And we wanted to get, you know, wanted to depart from, of course we did when you're making up 300 zombies, some of them have to be done with streaks and tips. You know, so you're spraying colors on, you know, and stay away in the background, but they work their way up front because everyone wants to be on camera. So we had like background zombies that just had colors sprayed on. It's like, stay away back there. You know, and then we had featured zombies that would get the full effect, and then we'd have like, you know, mid-ground zombies that, you know, we'd spend less time on. But yeah, we kind of went for a Michael Jackson Thriller, you know, look. It was kind of an influence. And John Vulich, he was our major effects guy that we hired while we were at Tom's house. We did everything in Tom's basement. You know, we'd show up for work and go work down in Tom's basement all day. But John from LA, he came and he brought a great style with him, and he heavily influenced the color of the zombies, the paint schemes that we used, and, you know, just kind of ran with that.
And we had Michael Jackson's doctor.
You started mentioning the dialogue, and of course, so much of the dialogue is famous. For each of the cast members, what's the lines that, probably like the most prominent line for each of you that the fans come up and either want you to say or want you to write it on a photo? And what is...
I have one in mind.
And how does that compare to your own favorite line from the film?
Well, it's funny, we did a thing a year ago at the Egyptian Theater with the new soundtrack came out on the CD and the beautiful LP. I don't know if you've seen the cover of that. It's just gorgeous artwork. They were asking George a question about improvisation, and I couldn't believe it. I mean, it was like, yeah. I mean, he was like, yeah, you know, Joe came up with choke on him. And I'm like, thanks, George. That's good. And then he scratches his head again and he goes, and I think puss fuck too. I think Joe came up with puss fuck. Because the day we shot it, they would cut. And they checked the gate, and the sound guy goes, he was his dad, Trey, he goes, George, did he say puss fuck? And George goes, yeah, I like it. But the one I get requested the most, when I sign, it's either choke on them or puss fuck. But sometimes somebody will make me work that I'm running this monkey's farm now, Frankenstein, and I want to know what the fuck you're doing with my time, which is very hard to fit pretty much anywhere. But that would be the sticker for me, for what the fans like. And I personally, like, you want me to salute that walking pile of pus, salute my ass. That's George.
He visited a curse on us. So we might get a look at what hate was like. The fans like that one a lot, so that's one of the ones I took and signed.
I already told you my favorite one. Yes, sir. Fuck you, sir.
Is that your favorite line because of who you were saying it to?
Yeah,
Is that
it was great, yeah. I mean, finding that character, it was just a great thing. You know?
After I took the glue out, Gretchen said the same thing.
Anyway, I really, I'll tell you the one line I hated saying, and I tried to, make it natural, was it was a line that was necessary because it was a setup line, but they're turning into Jello. Oh, I said, how am I going to make that line? Like, oh my God, they're turning into Jello. Yeah, then.
And they overdubbed it. Bill Cosby overdubbed it.
Right, yeah. I actually did Jello. It's funny, I did a Jello commercial with Bill Cosby. Are you serious? I did, really. Maybe that's why.
On the strength of that line?
No, it's not funny, no. Yeah. But anyway. I actually remember everybody else's lines more than my lines because, Sarah was kind of the straight woman, and but no, seriously, there were some great lines, and my favorite one truly was that line. And I'll write that for anybody if they want it. I'll say to people, do you know, is it okay if I put that line down? Do you have kids at home? Oh yeah, that would be great. I love putting that.
Terry had an interesting story about your audition on the film, talking about the dialogue.
Oh, yes. George, again, was a wonderful spirit and an easygoing kind of director. And he was looking for somebody to do a Caribbean accent for this character. He had just rewritten the script maybe a couple days before because it was way long. And they didn't want to do all those special effects. It would cost a fortune. So we rewrote it. And he was looking for somebody who could do it. So I came in and I saw this wonderful, literate, wonderful monologue. And I said, George, please, man, please, I love this. If you could just give me overnight, sleep on it, with it, I'll come back tomorrow and I'll give you something you like. And he said, okay, but most directors won't say that. They'll, boy, you're a dime a dozen, just do it and get out. So he gave me the opportunity, I came back, and that's how I got the part. I did a great job on the monologue. And that's the first thing I did with him. And that's the last thing I did in the movie. We came back from Florida, that's the last thing I did in the movie. And it was a wrap for me after that. So, and I kind of didn't expect to make it. When you do something that large and that long in a horror movie, you say, well, maybe it'll make a couple things, a couple sentences here and there, but that's not going to be there. But it made it. Very glad about that. And I'm so glad I didn't have to loop it.
So interested, I'd love to hear, if you don't mind, about the fans, their questions too.
Yeah, we're going to take questions in a second. I want to know one other thing. I've always heard and been told that the movie wasn't well received when it first came out. Now, I didn't experience that at all. When I saw it the week it came out, several times in a midnight, showing in the New York, New Jersey area, and people just loved it, and they were screaming, and it was packed every night. But what were your experiences when the film first came out and the reception it got? Do you want to talk about it?
Disappointment, no, I was so disappointed. The critics didn't like, a lot of the critics didn't like it. They expected something more like Dawn of the Dead. And we were just so excited. It was such a wonderful experience for all of us, and it was a strong female character, which was unusual besides, of course, Aliens, and that was in the sci-fi. But for George to have written that part was such a wonderful thing for me as a young actress. And it was George is always ahead of his time in that way, which is why you're here, because people have found it, especially with all the zombie craze now. People are revisiting the old films and seeing how it started, and that is very satisfying to know that we thought there was a lot to this film, and but it just wasn't commercially accepted at that time.
You got to remember that Return of the Living Dead came out just before Day came out, so everybody thought that was George's movie, and they went to see it. And I said, wrong, no. That's why we had a problem with audiences at that particular moment in time.
One of my family, that they don't know much about the movie business, but they were in Sharon, Pennsylvania. They said, we went to see your film, but we didn't see you in it. It's the wrong film.
It was at lighting. Is there any way that we could get to see the audience? That would be really nice if we could figure that out, and I'm not stepping on anybody's toes. When the film came out, I was telling you a story yesterday. It's funny because I had planned a trip to Italy with my entire family, cousins, uncles, the whole family was going to go over on a tour of Italy, and I was going to join my mother and father, God rest their souls, too. And I get a call that the premiere of Day of the Dead is happening in New York the weekend that I'm supposed to be in Italy. So I'm going, you're an actor, and you're always weighing what's going to be good and what's not going to help you and things. So I'm going, I should be there. So I canceled the trip to Italy. Rent a room at the St. Mark's Hotel. Terry and I, that big white limousine, rented, and we pull up. It was about 60 people in the theater, and the thing. I mean, we had to wait in line to get into the party because the disco guy was thinking we were just like people that he had to pick to get into the thing. So it was a disaster, and it was meant everybody wanted a shopping mall, and they were pissed off that they got a cave. I canceled my fucking trip to Italy for this disaster. And finally, years later, Siskel and Ebert gave it like thumbs down. I was sitting watching, crying, and then 10 years later they revisited it and said they were wrong. But it's George's favorite part of the trilogy, and like a good wine, we aged well.
Yeah, that was disappointing. The critical reviews were just unfair at the time. Again, we thought we all did our best work, and George did, for what the film started out being, and he had to cut back and make concessions. It still has a great vision. It's still George's movie, and there's a lot he did not compromise on. It's all up there on the screen, and yeah, it's at the time it was kind of panned. And you look at it now, and there are college courses, I'm sure, devoted to dissertation on Day of the Dead. Time changes things.
Stands the test of time.
So we're going to take some questions from the audience. Tim will come around with the microphone.
Hi, you guys. Thanks for being here.
Welcome. Thank you.
You're talking about college courses. I'm actually here for a college course, and that's why I'm seeing this on the American Monster. And I was wondering, with you guys talking about change over time and how it was received initially and then 10 years later getting revisited and people embracing it, do you think anything that was happening societally, like at the time with politics or anything, in your experience, has changed the way people view the film when it came out versus 10 years later versus now?
That's a huge question. Really, it is. Yeah.
Let me just say before you answer, if whoever has the next question, just put your hand up so Tim can get to you before they finish answering. Go ahead.
there was a certain amount of somnambulism politically in the 80s. We were between the very active 60s and 70s with a real visceral stance against certain political issues. And they kind of waned in the 80s, but there was still that edge, particularly in George's writing, where he, historically speaking, the military presence versus the scientific presence, which versus the Hispanic presence in Miguel, which the more voodoo spiritual presence in Terry's character, and those all collided. That was the beauty of it, the claustrophobia. As we moved to the 80s into the 90s, and things slowly got a little bit more politically tense and more violence, and the assholes from the NRA, and the multiplicity of stupidity that this government has engaged in. The sons of the fans, the daughters of the fans, have kind of picked up the clarion call of the movie, and it's grabbed them there. I mean, genre fans are the best fans. They're not looky-loos. They come to the table with questions, and they come to the table with comments. And the last thing is the autograph and the exchange of money. It's the genre fans are make the enrichment of this thing. And I think given the what's going to happen in the Middle East, there could be a lot of zombies walking around.
Well, yeah. Well, once again, George was prophetic, wasn't he? I mean, we came out of the Vietnam War. It was a time of peace. There was the whole disco movement and the years of women, and coming out of all the activism, and then of course now after 9/11 and all the terrorism, it's definitely is more. I mean, it really stands the test of time, and even so, it's more, like Joe was just saying, end of times, kind of end of times. I mean, every generation says it's the end of times, but it is the end of times.
So first of all, thank you very much for coming. It's been wonderful seeing you all again as fans of the film. It's a real treat to see all of you, and particularly the behind-the-scenes pictures. Less of a question and just more a view from the trenches. During the summer of '85, I was working in a movie theater, and I worked through both Return of the Living Dead and Day of the Dead. The thing that I remember most that came away with me was, even though both audiences screamed and laughed through both films, when they left Return, they just kind of left. But when they left Day of the Dead, they left discussing. And I think that even back then, it did make a big impact on the audiences. It did get the audiences to think. And I think that it did do, with the right kind of audience, it did make the impact that finally now other people are starting to catch up with. So excellent work all around, and thanks again for being part of such a great film.
Thank you. Thank you.
That goes to what Joe was just saying, that it's George's writing style is so layered. With Return of the Living Dead, it's an entertaining film, but there's not a lot of depth there.
I know in the industry itself, I mean, my agent, the fact that I was doing like a horror movie, that it was kind of frowned upon. It wasn't like, it just, people didn't think that was a good way to move your career, believe it or not. But even though it was a wonderful part, it was sort of doing a horror movie.
A lot of actors, young actors, could get their start doing a horror movie. That was the way to get in, because they wouldn't do the regular Hollywood stance of finding a bankable actor and getting money to produce the movie from that name. So, yes.
George found us from different things that we've done. I mean, he found me, even though he knew my father from Night of the Living Dead, he saw me doing a play in New York, where the character sort of runs with the script, and she's on stage the whole time. So he knew I could play that kind of part. So he went in the trenches to find the actors that weren't as well known, and was able to get some of the quality performances because of where he found all of us. Even though we got just canned for our acting also at the beginning.
Do you think that there's some validity to the theory that when a genre becomes really popular, all the fans of that genre go to the source material? And become interested in the genre when it wasn't that popular?
I think it may be the other way around in Hollywood. I've worked on several movies where, you know, the buzzword is, you know, some big director is doing a certain movie. So the thing is, oh, that's going to be the next big thing. So we have to, you know, we have to make that first. Or we have to do, you know, something like that first. Might be the tail wagging the dog, if that answers your question.
You know, the beauty about, particularly George, in the genre, is all his films, including Monkey Shines, including Night Riders, including The Dark Half, and then the trilogy and beyond the trilogy of the franchise. They're all very different. He does not repeat himself, where I think if you look at other, which helps very strongly getting back to the source, going back to Night of the Living Dead, you know, or going back to the Universal classics in terms of the genre. But, you know, it seems today you got Saw 13, Saw 4. I saw Saw 14. Did you see Saw 15 yet? It's coming out next week. And Halloween 33. You know, and there can be, you know, no pun intended, there can be overkill with zombies. There really can. And, you know, I'm sorry, personally, The Walking Dead is a soap opera with zombies.
I texted Greg Nicotero when we were sitting out there to see if he was in town to come visit, but he's in Texas doing the show. But he was a 19-year-old boy on the set, you know, working with Tom, and you can see the young actors that are in the Walking Dead. I mean, they're reaping the benefits of a lot of hard work behind them, and I mean, they can come to a show, and it's just amazing, you know, what television and the audience you can reach in that way, and it's really nice that it's so popular, and to have been a part of the history of it, even though a lot of people may not know it, you know, we know it, and that's a wonderful feeling to have been a part of something that we knew was special, but and now it's, you know, being older and able to appreciate that, and to appreciate you appreciating it, because then our work we knew it was special then, and it really is like a life well lived. So thank you.
Hi there, Mr. Pilato, over here to your left.
What did I do?
You play such despicable fuck, man.
Thank you, man. Fuck you.
No, I love it. I love it. Oscar-worthy aneurysm. I could see it. The question for you is, Heath Ledger said with the Joker he was depressed after making the role. How do you play such a mean-ass fuck and just, you know, go on like you're just this Joker like you are now, you know? You're so fun-loving. So how did you do it?
When you're starving and you're offered a plate of scenery to eat, it's not that hard, but also to show the military in the light that I believe George wanted to show them in, but I know I wanted to show them in, was a great engine for the aneurysm message. Thank you.
What's your guys' opinion of the prior Dead films, the George Romero ones? You know.
Oh, classics, just absolute classics. You know, my personal favorite. I love Dawn of the Dead. I grew up in Pittsburgh. The Monroeville Mall was about 7 miles from my house. I used to hang out. My wife used to work there. You know, so I can't, to this day, I can't walk through the mall without thinking of, you know, Dawn of the Dead. You know, so
Pittsburgh is so funny too, because some of my friends, I said, yeah, I was in a horror movie. Oh, really? Yeah, it was a pretty famous one. They're just so nonchalant about all of it, in Pittsburgh. You're just Pittsburgh. Pittsburgh's Pittsburgh.
Oh, it's a Romero. Oh, yeah, my cousin did that.
Oh, right, my cousin was in that one. Great. I still live 7 miles from the Monroeville Mall.
Terry, you knew along the lines of this question, and being the prominent African-American actor, and you knew Ken Foray and Dwayne Jones as well, right? The two actors who preceded you had starring roles. What could you add about knowing those gentlemen?
Well, that's one of George Romero's techniques. He wanted to frame another social comment with his work, and that was one of the ways he did it. There are racial overtones in Night of the Living Dead when they come in the end, and they see this guy, they don't even question whether he's a zombie or not, they just kill him. So George is always aware of social commentary in his movies, and the feminist thing is there in all his movies. He explores it, he brings it out, and he gives it to you to digest or not digest. That's what I loved about George and his technique. So Ken was wonderful, Dwayne was good, but he wanted this specific character because we're in the dark. And if you have a Caribbean character, that represents the sun, and you want to feel like, I want to get in the sun. And it makes it more tense for the movie. It adds another level of intensity. So I'm sure he picked that, and the reason he made that character that way. So,
Could I ask a question? I wonder if you'd be interested in this. It's really not a plug, honest to God, but I was always interested growing up in the horror genre because my father was Chilly Billy in Pittsburgh, and he had like the first horror the first horror show, show in the nation, and anyway, so I was always interested watching people with my father when we'd go to the Monroeville Mall, whatever. And, he's a good man, he loves his fans. But I was always interested in real life horror juxtaposed against the industry of horror. So I've written something with a friend, and we're going to try to get it produced. It's a film about that, about real life horror. It goes back to Pittsburgh in '68 when they made Night of the Living Dead, and sort of mixes it back and forth. Would you be interested in something like that?
I would.
Thank you, because, there is a... Yeah.
While we have Elliot, who runs Monsterpalooza, in the room, I want to know since she brought up Mr. Bill Cardille, who on the West Coast would like to see Mr. Bill Cardille here at Monsterpalooza? There you go, Elliot.
I'll tell my daddy. Yeah, I'll tell my daddy.
Laurie, this question will be for you. One thing that really struck me when I first saw the film when it came out was the whole dreamlike thread running through the film. And the happy ending of the film with this dreamlike calypso music, it almost struck me that it was almost a hallucination, that she, in fact, did not make it out. Did that ever strike you that this could have been that the ending itself could have been a dream?
Sure, but as playing the character, you don't play it like that. I mean, you believe wherever you are, you're playing the character wherever you are. So, but I thought that was an interesting twist. Although the audience, really, a lot of the audiences didn't like that ending at the time. They thought it was a cop out and all that. But I thought it was interesting. Yeah, but yeah, at the time, I'm telling you, it was so interesting. But sure, there's all possibilities. In fact, Terry and Jarlath and I said it would be cool to do those three characters now as being older people to see what happened to those people. Somebody to produce something like that, because it would be, I would wonder what happened to them, It could be interesting. And I wanted to play the character when I first met George. I said, could we cut her hair off and make her really with her teeth missing, and could we do it that raw? He said, no, Lori, that's a different movie. But it would be interesting to play those characters as sort of like animals in a way.
Well, that would be you, Terry, and Jarlath on the island, and that would be Day of the Menage a Trois.
And then we bring the ghost of Rhodes back.
You said the stump. You said that was the last question. Just very quick. Yeah, you're going to do us a favor now. But quickly, as Shakespeare said, we are such stuff as dreams are made of. So in 1984, we made George's Dream, and we were part of that. Then in 1985, you saw the dream, George, and you entered into the dream. So without you attached to this, it's nothing. You have made this. You are a contributing element to this happiness and exchange. So now you're going to do a favor. Gary Clark, who plays Steele, was supposed to be here today. He couldn't make it. No, I set it up because he had a conflict in business. And when I go like that, I want you all to, hi Gary, bang, you're dead. I don't know if I can do it on three. Wait, it's calling. Hang on.
Okay.
Better wait for the beat.
Hi, Gary.
No, say it loud too. He's dedicated. He's not.
But anyway, thanks. It's true what Joe said. Thank you so much.
Gary, hang on 1 second. I want you to hear something. 1, 2, 3.
Hi, Gary.
Can I call you back? I'll call you back.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Jim. Thank you, Day of the Dead panel. All right, ladies and gentlemen, we have a Phantasm panel coming in at 2. Please exit carefully out the back. We're really stuffed in here. So please slowly and carefully exit. And we'll be starting in about 10 minutes with Phantasm.